You right there, Victor?
We're moving in a month's time, so I'm also starting to get all the books.
If you're going to showcase the library behind you, Victor, you have to have lots of philosophy and like thoughtful scholars. And
in our time as well, there wasn't series and laptops, and so I read a lot of books while on tour.
Yeah, but you lads lasted longer at World Cups. I didn't last long enough to get through too many books.
I used to read pre-game just to take my mind off the game because I had such an active mind. You know, from the moment I got up, just to distract myself to try and get to the game.
I was the same. My wife couldn't talk to me because it's so strange on game day. And then the warm-up, I used to hate the warm-up. I remember just saying to myself, why did I do this? Why did I do this to myself? I hate this. Please just start playing rugby here.
I was the same as you. Although when we first started playing, we weren't allowed to warm up on the field. So we used to have to warm up
in the change room.
Remember, Ricardo, that old 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the change room. Like, ridiculous.
I hated warm-ups. So warm-up, you always got like 10 minutes where there's individual stuff that the guys do. I just went and sit behind the poles and just watch everyone going. I hated warm-up. I just needed like 5 minutes, almost like you said, John, just 10 quick steps, straight to hammies, then I was ready to go.
Right, I hope you warmed up for the show.
Yeah, nice.
So this is Rivals. Play the titles. Let's get straight into it. The word today, innovation, Russie's innovation. Start with you, Victor. What did you think?
Yeah, he's always up to something. Actually, the 2 tries that we scored off the mini line-out in the midfield, I think that's something that's been done before. Not the line-out, but setting up mauls from, let's say, a set P or a breakdown. In the past, the guy was just standing on the floor, not jumping. And this time they jumped. But it worked for us. I remember the Bulls, scoring more tries from scrums against the Brumbies. I think we scored 3 tries in one game where we set up the maul from a scrum and one was almost 40 meters. So I think that's something that's been there, that people has done. I think they've just changed. And it's actually funny. My daughter is playing netball, and in the pro netball league the other day, they used a line out, a netball, to get to that, you got 1 2-pointer that's just on the edge to get a 2-pointer. And Russie's daughter was there as well. So I wonder if the netball was where he saw it. That's great. But I think, to be honest, we need to have a look at the law, because there's a lot of time where people, when they get a pass, they jump in the air, they get tackled, and they say penalty, you're not allowed. So I think they need to have a look at that. Can you jump into the ball when you're in normal attack? Interesting, and he'll always come up with something.
Yeah, I had a laugh because when I was coaching Italy, we did that kickoff against Ireland. I think it was in 2003, something like that, because we felt we had a better scrum. So we did this little kick, and then we started with a scrum against Ireland. And we got penalised like South Africa did straight away. But I love the innovation. I just think, like what you mentioned, Victor, about we need to understand when we're flaunting with the laws rather than being innovative. I think what's in the best interest of the game. I mean, I love Rassie's innovation. I think they're great. I mean, we spoke about this around players and the whole physical player changing. So, if we introduce some of this stuff, is it going to fundamentally change, what we all stand for the game? So, but yeah, I keep it going. And then the interesting thing for me more over the weekend, was, I don't know whether you thought it was a good performance, Victor, but I thought it was probably the worst and most frustrating performance I've seen from South Africa for a long time. So, when you play Italy, sometimes they can be incredibly frustrating. I know they'll go away and say, well, we scored 6 or 7 tries, whatever it is, but I just didn't feel that they got into their rhythm as a game. And I don't know, before the game, I thought South Africa and France are the 2 sides that have real big depth. But I felt a few of the guys that played on the weekend, I don't know if they're up to the level of some of the older guys. So I think it was a really revealing. If you're an opposition, if you're an All Black, if you're French and you're looking at South Africa, current world champions, we're always trying to look for some, some fault or some sort of angle to win. So I didn't think it was a great performance from South Africa as a whole.
Which players do you think didn't stand up?
I didn't think your whole front five stood up, and I don't know whether that was a tactical change early in the piece with your prop, who might have been struggling against the Italians. I just felt your leadership too wasn't really. You got frustrated. It didn't help that you got a red card, but it didn't seem like the stuck to the plan of breaking down Italy and then running them off their feet and then just really letting them explode. I felt that they left them in the side a wee bit. So I didn't think your front five was as dominant. And it seemed like they were trying to just bully the opposition rather than outplay them. That's the sensation I got,
Yeah, I must say, I thought it was a much better performance than last week. Going up, playing good rugby, then you get a red card, and hopefully we can talk about that red card again. Then they go down to 13 men and still give them 0, score 45 points. It's always difficult with one man down because now you lose a centre, he goes to the forwards. Does he play as a forward? Does he play as a centre? So it's very difficult. So I thought they did what they needed to do. The physicality was there, the intent was there, much better than last week. So I don't think it was that bad a performance if you think we've played with 14 men for 60 minutes.
Are they trying to be too physical?
I don't think so. I think when you get to the big games, that's what's going to be important. Like I told you, we're not a New Zealand side. We're not an island side that in this easier games just go and score 100 points. That's something South Africa is never good at. We like the grind in the game, like to play the pressure game. And I don't think, even in this easier games, we don't want to go away from our style. I think, and that's why the first kickoff happened, because I don't think Russie were happy with the physicality last week, and he wanted to start with that from the first second.
What did you think, Andrew?
Yeah, just with the innovation in particular, I love it. I love it, but I think there's an acknowledgement from Razzie or the rest of the Springboks coaches that any innovation, they don't always stumble across a moment of brilliance, or it's not always genius, but they try stuff. And I think one of the things with innovating, trying new things, you have to have an appetite for risk. And I think they've got that, and I think they're happy that occasionally they're going to get things wrong. Occasionally they'll just create headlines rather than create a huge opportunity for them to be better. And I think that's great. I think most like old-fashioned rugby head approaches is just a traditional conservative approach. Continue to do what you've always done, and I think they're pushing the boundaries, and I like that. And then the other thing is, and Victor, you kind of touched on it, the laws. You can't jump into a tackle, but you can jump to take a pass that then ends up being jumping into a tackle. That's stupid. That is a stupid part of our game, right? Right. And we could probably come up with 10 different examples of stupid parts of our game. But I think we all need, even we're all rugby people, and we all need to acknowledge that the laws, and you get in trouble for calling them rules. I'm going to call them rules because it seems more. No, I think when we call them laws, we take ourselves a bit too seriously. The rules, they're not the laws of physics. Let's get over ourselves. This is a game we made up. It's just a fun game we made up, and now we all take it very seriously. And Razzie's kind of poking fun at the game a little bit and trying to innovate if we're going to, take his approach a little bit more seriously. So I like it.
I think it's a really interesting point, because I don't think South Africa are risk takers. I think they're the leading side in the world. They're full of innovation, but I don't see them as risk takers.
I think the only risk is almost like a personal one, because they could look silly. They do stuff that's different, and everybody goes, "Why are you doing something stupid here? Why don't you just continue to do?" Victor, as you say, get physical. That's your ID. That's what you're known for. Get physical. Get direct. But occasionally they do stuff like this. Even when you think of Razzie, you think of Razzie with the traffic lights, and no one's that appears attention seeking. Appears like something people are going to talk about that rather than the result of the game or the performance in the game. And he's happy to say, I don't care, I'm just going to try something different. If it communicates more clearly to the players, then we've stumbled across something that works. He either doesn't care what people think, or he wants them to overthink, and then he just goes, fine, we'll chat about this afterwards and see where it goes. Or he's maybe just having fun with it. I don't know the personality, Razzie.
I'm almost like with you there, where it makes people overthink. If you think last year we used Cheslin Colby, Firstly, in the scrum to put in the ball, and the 9 went to 10. And then we actually just still scrummed for a penalty, and we got the penalty from the scrum. So it's just almost letting the loose forwards think, what are they doing now? They're probably just looking out because all of a sudden Colby is there, and that gives us opportunity to go for the penalty try or penalty scrum. Line out as well, go to the front ball with Colby throwing. Just a lot of time, it's just something that makes the opposition think, and hopefully they'll change something that Rassie is hoping for, and then it works. But coming back to the kickoff, I just wonder if someone break the laws or the rules, whatever we want to call it. And you can see there was intent to break it. Shouldn't it be more than a scrum there?
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's a great point, Victor. My trouble is with our game, and I think, Trimble, you mentioned it, is that we add laws, but we never take them off, right? So, Bowden Barrett, we've all been athletes, right? We are trained to react. So his reaction in the test match against France was putting his hand out. Like, that was not intentional. That was an elite athlete's reaction. So, like, we're adding these laws. People are flaunting them. I think it's fantastic. I agree that I think Rassie and what South Africa do is amazing from an innovation point of view. But we've got to start taking the contradiction out of our game. Like you say, if you lift and you touch them in a maul, it's a penalty. Like, so all those different types of rules, we need to start getting rid of some. Like that, I think we need to start being more innovative around points. Like, let's say, Victor, if you get a yellow card and the referee comes to you as captain and says, "Look, this is a bland yellow card. Would you prefer the yellow card or 3 points?" And give you the choice. Because at the end of the day, like you said, South Africa were reduced to 13 men. Now the headbutt, we spoke about this in the past. I mean, he's been frustrated, and Italy can do that to you.
But was it a headbutt or a head push? He just pushed against his head. There was nothing. Nothing could have happened from there.
I thought it might have been a kiss to start with. I thought it might have been a kiss
could
to
have been a
start
kiss
with.
as well. Came in a bit passionate, but it was good. Understand? Must that be? Do we want the whole crowd because of that not to see a 15-on-15 game? I still don't understand that. Give the penalty. You're not allowed to do it, but why send someone off? It was like a touch. Both came in to put their heads together. There was, I don't know.
Well, if you look at the contradiction, Victor, if you look at the All Black game where the two locks lifted Geordie Barrett and his knees came up above his waist, and then as the lock came down, he headbutted him by mistake, and it was a yellow card. Now, if you did that in Europe, Trimble, you lifted anyone, like, wasn't the law if you hook under their knee, it's just about an automatic red card. And so it's this whole consistency that we're talking about. I disagree with you, though, Victor. I think the action of headbutting someone is, he's just, it's stupid for me. He's just been stupid. All the other ones, I go, yeah, I mean, Bowden Barrett's a reaction, but actually that.
But again, he's stupid. He gives away the penalty. It was a South African penalty. Now it gets turned around. So it was stupid, but there wasn't harm done at all. Nothing.
The only problem with that one, though, the intent is no one can judge the intent. That's the problem. Or no one can judge, as you say, Victor. He's not really going to do any damage there. He's touching and pushing. So, but at the same time, I think as soon as we leave space for the refs to decide, is there a high level of danger, for example? Sure, that's one person will read it one way, another person will read it another way. I think there has to be a clear. So for me, it probably needs to be, if there's contact, it needs to be penalised. Because if it's a grey area, then it just depends what the referee thinks.
I agree. I agree 100% with a penalty or penalise it. But was that a red card? That's what I'm asking.
But we're going to get into like refs being sensible. I hate refs being sensible or making rugby decisions. I think that's if it's clear in the law, then I think it's better to legislate that way rather than saying, "Come on, be sensible, referees."
But we do allow them, I mean, with a head-to-head to make a decision. Was it high fours, wasn't it? High fours was there. So why can't we let them make a decision on something like that as well?
I don't think they'd have the courage.
Yeah, I agree. I think they would all bottle it. They all want to hide behind an opportunity. You know, the other one I've thought about is I heard you guys talking about TMOs and referees previously. One of the other things that frustrates me is, and we're talking about speeding the game up. All of this, everything we're talking about, you know, experimenting with the laws and introducing new ways and simplifying the laws. Importantly, JK. Like we've seen this in MLB, we've seen this in NBA, we've seen this in Gaelic football in Ireland. They changed the laws to increase the speed of the game, to improve the spectacle, make the product better, and make more people attracted to the game. So that's what we need to do. But rugby, then, there's a snobbery in rugby where we like the complexity. Some rugby people like the complexity of the game because it creates a barrier to entry to people who rugby isn't for, ultimately. And I think that's something we need to do away with. And you touched on it, JK. With we have to remove laws, we have to simplify laws, we have to make it easier for new people to get involved, like to follow rugby and be passionate about rugby like we are. The other one that I don't like is whenever referees take too long and have a chat with the touch judge and then have a chat with the TMO, and then they go over to the player and they say, there has been 3 penalties in quick succession in the 22, you're now on a warning. What other part of the game or the rules is there a warning? You know, no one says to a player, just be careful. Remember, if you knock the ball on, then I'm going to give a scrum against you. No, we all understand if you knock the ball on, you're going to concede a scrum. I think there should be something automated. If you give away 3 penalties in your 22 within 5 minutes, whatever it is, it's
3 points.
it's a yellow 3-point, whatever it is. But just
3 points.
speed this up. I think the less we get our referees chatting to each other, and they use those opportunities to, like, it's a disclaimer. They all say, does anybody disagree? And they're just waiting for people to back them up or support them. And they're playing politics. None of them are brave enough to say, no, let's get on with the game. We all just want to see rugby being played.
And it's not their fault, man. That's the system, you know. This is our new chairman from Australia promised change. That's what he got re-elected on. He promised change. So we have been changing the laws and speeding the game up, and yet the officialdom is slowing it down. And don't get me wrong, this is not the ref's fault. They're doing a job, and they have bosses that are telling them how to do that job. But they are scared, right? They are scared to actually, this is the coaches now. The coaches are now scared to say stuff after the game because we don't want to have, challenging the ref in our game. And I agree with that from a moral and a value standard. But the trouble is that the coaches aren't coming off the game anymore and saying, that's a ridiculous law, get rid of it. So we need some of our guys like Rusty, like Razor, like Eddie Jones to just start standing up together. Maybe they get together and say, look, these are the 4 laws that we want to get rid of, and stand up and say it after every game until our chairman actually does what he said he's going to do and change the game.
Can I change the discussion, because we're basically doing last week's discussion this week as well? So you've given that South Africans a C+, JK. What did you give the All Blacks for their victory over France?
Gave them an A, mate. Gave them an A.
It's still a B side. You play it again.
I didn't give South Africa a C+. I think it was interesting because I saw a different game to Victor. I didn't think they played as well as they did the week before. But anyway, so I thought the All Blacks were really good. I thought that their the style of play that they are trying to play, like Victor said, that is South African style. I saw an All Black style that I really enjoyed on the weekend. I think there was some real positive stuff coming out of it. I think they had a really solid performance against the side that they should have beaten. Like Victor's right. So I thought, I thought they were really good. I thought it was a good game of rugby. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the free flowing style. I'm starting to see a style. You can call it a Razor style if you like. Where we're getting back to a game that I think is going to help us get back to the top.
Yeah, just back to South Africa again. I think there's a few youngsters that really stood up. I thought Grant Williams at 9 were just outstanding. It's nice to see Peter Steph Toy back as well. He's very involved in the game. And then I like Kanan Moody. I said it for a long time. Look, JC Creel is our number 113, but some youngsters getting opportunity. Kane and Moody doing really well at 13. Even Ether Hooker coming on 13 is a young guy. He's 21 years old, getting a great opportunity. So that's what I liked about this South Africa. I also thought New Zealand were good. I thought they were pretty good in the first test as well. Unfortunately, those 2 tries weren't given. But I think New Zealand is playing good rugby. There's still 1 or 2 things that I think they'll be tested once they get against proper competition. But I've said it, I think New Zealand is on the up as well. And this is going to be a tough year for South Africa if you want to beat them more than they beat us.
So, Victor, you think they haven't been tested in that physical exchange? Is what you're suggesting there? Scrum, direct confrontation. That type of approach, that Springbok approach.
I think they've been tested like that. France will always test you physically. I think this younger team just makes too many errors. So they give the opportunity to the All Blacks that some other teams that's more experienced, that's play the game a bit more tighter or is just accurate in what they're doing. Doesn't matter if they play like South Africa or like Ireland. They just don't give the All Blacks the opportunities that they want to play off loose ball. And again, the All Blacks still haven't found a way to play against the rush defense. And once Ireland probably will come with a bit of a harder line, and after Leinster has done it, South Africa, I still want to see how they attack with this combination against a very hard line of defense.
It's kind of sneaking in, isn't it, to Irish rugby and through to the Lions. It's like Jacques is kind of influencing Leinster, who in turn is influencing Ireland and then influencing the Lions. But I thought from an Irish rugby perspective, the weekend was a complete waste of time. They played Portugal. They put 106 points in Portugal. Whenever you look at all of the other teams in the Six Nations, they're all stealing a march in Ireland at the minute. And I think Ireland, granted their top tier guys, they're kind of 12 whatever guys on the Lions, getting plenty of experience, international experience there. There's absolutely no strength and depth being developed because they're playing Portugal, an amateur side, effectively in front of 5,000 people, no atmosphere. They didn't even have a TMO at the game. That's how little attention was paid to Ireland and Portugal. Georgia the week before was slightly better, but not great. When you look at England getting tested in Argentina, Wales finally getting a win, first win in maybe 5 years. That's where they're at. They're getting meaningful rugby there.
Scotland going down to Fiji.
Yep. But Scotland are getting meaningful rugby. Italy, obviously, but Ireland they're all stealing a march in Ireland in terms of the Six Nations contributors at this stage.
Was that an Irish choice to take some risk out, sort of knowing that you're going to have 12 or 15 Lions players?
I assume it is, but I don't know how early in the calendar those tours are arranged, and I don't know how confident they were of having that many Irish Lions away unavailable for that Irish tour. And I don't know how difficult, like Ireland, like at the minute, it's not the Ireland brand because obviously they're all away. It's different personnel, so maybe it's difficult to arrange those fixtures or create as much attraction and bring them to a side whenever it's going to be a tier 2 team and not as many recognizable names. So I don't know what the mechanism is or how they what the decision making is or how early the decision making is and what they know at that stage. But in hindsight, I think there'll be some good experience for guys, but the experience that the Irish players will be from Leinster players working with Munster coaches or Leinster players working with Paul O'Connell. But that's the only Irish coach in the setup. It's not an international experience, but there'll be some development from spending time with other guys from other provinces, thinking about the game differently. But the development they would have got would have been off the pitch. On the pitch, they would have got nothing out of it.
England is probably the team that took the biggest step forward here. If you think that England's squad there is being challenged by playing in Argentina, and I thought they were actually outstanding. I think England rugby is looking really strong at the moment. You've got a lot of younger kids getting opportunity, but you've got Spence and Ford 9-10 controlling the game. And I actually enjoyed that game against Argentina. I thought England looked really good, and they've got quite a few guys for the Lions team as well.
And that's like going to Fiji too, Victor. It's hard to win over there. I agree with you. I think Borthwick has brought in a style, and like you talk about South African style, New Zealand style, Irish style. I think, when you think about the different styles, I think Ireland is probably dominating, the North. I think it's really interesting this week because I think the Northern Hemisphere is way stronger than the Southern Hemisphere at the moment. And I'm waiting for that Lions series. Like, I know someone came out yesterday and said within the squad that we want to win 3-0, which is probably not what the coaches wanted them to come out and say. But I just think that the depth of rugby, the depth of the competition in the Northern Hemisphere is producing way more players. I know, Victor, that that's the second or third French side, but in that first Test match, like you talk about some of your young guys getting an opportunity and standing up. I mean, they would have got 5 or 6 decent Test players out of that side that's going to add to the 10 guys that are home or the 20 guys at home, whatever. So, I think the depth of the Northern Hemisphere is so much better than the Southern Hemisphere. I think the competitions are better. So I don't know. You saw that sort of Aussie New Zealand side get thrown together to play the Lions, and normally when you throw the Barbars together with the quality of play that was out there, you get a decent game of football. But the Lions were just dominant. Like, it wasn't even worth probably having that game.
I think it shows how important cohesion is now. I wonder. I'm concerned, I suppose, that maybe something like a barbarian setup is a bit of a thing of a past because, I mean, look at Argentina, chinning the Lions while the Lions had only been together a week or two. They had no cohesion. They had no kind of established partnerships and just on the pitch time to really kind of understand and develop that understanding. But I think that's a really important. I think the days of throwing 15 talented guys together and just expecting them to perform, that's probably a thing in the past. And we saw that the weekend with the Lions.
Well, tell me what's going to happen in the Lions' first test.
I think the Lions. I think they're starting to kind of rev their engine a little bit. I think they're starting to look very good. 1 or 2 injuries, but there's plenty of strength and depth there. I think guys will. Mac Hansen, he was is unavailable for first test. Ringrose is unavailable for first test. 1 or 2 setbacks, but minor setbacks. I think Lions are looking pretty dominant at this stage. I know you guys are thinking 2-1. I'm thinking at least 2-1. I don't think it's wise for whoever it was, JK,
I
to
said
come out and
3
say,
0. I'm 3-0.
okay,
I'm with
okay,
you.
yeah. I'm looking more towards 3-0 than 2-1 at this stage.
Put a bottle of wine on that, lads.
Doesn't count if it's the last Test match. Should be one of the first or the second, John. If they win one of them, I'll say bring you over a very nice bottle of red.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, look, like for me, I was sitting yesterday and I was thinking about. I was watching that game, and and I've just mentioned it before. I'm worried about the depth of Southern Hemisphere rugby and the competitions that we play compared to possibly what the Northern Hemisphere is doing. And so I think it will be a real wake up call if it's 3-0. A real wake up call to how we're preparing. And what Super Rugby has become without South Africa. Dare I say it, Victor? Dare I say it? We miss you, my brother, in the Southern Hemisphere. So I think it could be a real. If it's 3-0, it could be a real big statement for the Northern Hemisphere.
I don't think a Southern Hemisphere, a Northern Hemisphere is so much better than the Southern Hemisphere. I just think there's 5 teams that's pretty far ahead of the rest at the moment. And I think South Africa, the All Blacks, Ireland, France, and England is just on another level. The other guys can maybe compete here and there, but consistently, there's just no chance that any of the other teams can compete. I mean, if you look at the URC, it's just the South African and the Ireland teams. Wales not coming through. Italian teams are not making the playoffs. If you look at this Super Rugby at the moment, New Zealand teams playing each other in the finals. So, yeah, I think the other teams has just fallen behind at this stage.
For me, it's not a competition thing. It's a depth thing, Victor. It's like a depth thing. I think there are, when you look at that French side, and I'm probably talking about French rugby and, Irish and English rugby. When you think that there are really competitive competitions, the URC, I think, is below the Premiership. So, but I just think there's a a depth in Northern Hemisphere rugby. I agree. I think a good Super Rugby side is going to compete against Leinster or whatever. But I just think there's depth after depth after depth. If that's the third best French side, that's pretty damn good, which means those 10 squads are all doing their job to develop players. My biggest concern is if it's 3-0 against Australia, what's their depth like? If they get a couple of injuries, like, I know it's the Lions, but if they get a couple of injuries in Aussie, they're toast. They don't have backup. I mean, when was the last dominant lock from Australia, Victor?
Well, Skelton is not too bad. I don't know if he'll be ready for the weekend. I mean, he made a big difference in that Aussie pack when he's playing for La Rochelle as well. He's pretty outstanding. And before that was probably Nathan Sharp. That was really outstanding.
So none of you are giving Australia any chance of winning this first test?
No.
Correct. That was a good statement, Ricardo. Well done. Yeah. Thanks for your contribution.
It was actually a question, so if you can tell by the word "can" and the question mark at the end, that implies a question.
I'm not going to sit on the fence. I think that the Lions will dominate.
But do you think this Lions tour, because unlike, say, previous tours where there's been tough games and close provincial games and all that sort of stuff, do you think this Lions tour, up until now, before the test matches, has lived up to the hype of a previous Lions tour, like in terms of excitement levels and stories and passion and heroes coming out of it?
Heroes are made in the test matches. No one will give a toss about the Waratahs game. And the reason I'm talking about the different levels is that, we had the best super sides playing against the Lions, and the Lions just continued to get better. Did they really get threatened by that? So for me, heroes come out of test matches. Heroes come out of test matches. This Lions team will be successful. They will have heroes if they win the series. Full stop. No one will remember or care about the games before.
I've heard stories where these Lions want to be the best Lions team ever. And if they get a 3-0 win, they might be seen as the best Lions team ever. But I think Australia will stand up. It will be a tougher test than we think. I think it will be closer as well. We saw last year how they stood up in the end of year tour. But unfortunately, at the moment, for this Lions tour, Australian rugby doesn't have the depth. I mean, they lost one of the Super Rugby franchises, still didn't get into a final of Super Rugby. So I think we mustn't look at Southern Hemisphere. We must look at Australian rugby. Where are Australia rugby at the moment?
Trimby?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to add anything new. It feels like Australia are struggling. It feels like they're trying to put something together. I think Joe Schmidt is the right person to try and put something together to make the most of what they have. But I think just with the raw ingredients of what they have, there's not enough talent there. There's not enough. There's nothing that I think the Lions would kind of really be concerned about. I don't think they'll approach the first test any differently than they've approached the other games. They'll just continue to do what they do, because what they do is going to be too much, I think, for Australia. It will be. I think Australia will show up. I think they will.
Yeah.
I think the first 50, 60 minutes it's going to be competitive, but I do feel like the Lions will pull away. That's been the pattern we've seen. There's too much depth. You bring off impact off the bench, and I think that's going to ultimately be too much for Australia. But it's not. It's just a reflection of where Australia rugby is at the minute.
So 20 years ago, Ireland was in exactly the same position, and probably Scotland as well. Ireland a little bit better, but Ireland were getting their butts kicked. What did Ireland do to go from, and because that's what Australia need to do, right? They were dominating the World Cup time, 91, 95. So what did Ireland do to create such depth?
So they developed the pathways. So the pathways are very clear. They're all generally grammar school, and there's a huge kind of push for, okay, we have to bring rugby into non-traditional rugby areas in Ireland. People who've grown up playing Gaelic football, playing hurling, playing soccer. Let's get into the clubs. Let's develop the clubs. I think it feels like David Nucifora, to a lesser extent, he obviously invested in the sevens. He saw that as a meaningful route pathway. David Humphreys doesn't see that, and he's took money away from or cancelled the men's sevens program. And he seems to be doubling down on the school. Now, the models are different in Ulster, Connacht, similar in Ulster. as they are in Leinster, but Connacht and Munster are probably a little bit different, and there's a little bit more of a leaning on the traditional club game rather than the school game. But they've just identified additional funds to bring in director of rugby's in those kind of leading schools in those two provinces, in the other three provinces as well. So it's Leinster is the heartbeat of Irish rugby at the minute. There's 5 schools in Leinster that alumni support. They pay for 3G pitches, they pay for directors of rugby, they pay in and they support financially that program, that school program. And then ultimately then Leinster rugby end up with 5 sub academies, pre academies. They all come in absolutely, these guys are physically ready to play professional, if not international rugby at the age of 18, 19. Then they go into the Leinster Academy and they kick on. And they're also the physical development they're getting and the technical development they're getting. The coaches are good. Everything is just quality the whole way through. That creates a pathway and a production line that Leinster end up getting it, and then Ulster, Munster, and Connacht get the spin off from that, and ultimately Irish rugby gets better and better.
Who pays, Andrew? Who pays for that? Irish rugby or Leinster rugby for the school?
I think there's a combination of it's quite complex. I believe the whole kind of funding mechanism is at Leinster, is at IRFU, but I think there's a lot of alumni from St Michael's, Blackrock, Clongowes, a lot of these kind of big posh schools in Dublin, where there's a lot of wealth coming out of these schools, and there's a lot of support for that school and for the rugby program. They say, here you go, far away, and all of that. The rich get richer in this game. Like Leinster sold out Croke Park in an afternoon against Munster, whatever, a couple of million quid, just like that. And then also the savings of the alumni in some of these schools, creating the pathway and creating the talent and the raw ingredients for Leinster to kick on. So a lot of Irish rugby supporters outside of Leinster would be very critical of that. And they tried to balance things a little bit, get more support to the other provinces. But David Humphreys, I think, is right in that he says, no, we do not. It's the job of him to improve the performance of the 3 other provinces rather than pull away from Leinster. Leinster rugby is Ireland's golden goose at the minute. It's going to continue to lay golden eggs. So don't pull any funding away from that. Don't muck that up. And I think that's important. Whereas I think the Ulster, Munster, and Connacht supporters, they would happily pull funding away from that, happily derail Irish rugby just to derail Leinster rugby. So there's those politics that David Humphreys has to deal with.
For us Kiwis, Victor, is that South Africa as well? Is that like you? I was listening to the commentary the other day, and they talk about scholarships.
South African schoolboy rugby is huge. Like Andrew said, I mean, I think it was 5 years ago, and there was a Super Rugby final with 25,000 people at the game, and at the same time, Paul Gim and Paul Boys High played each other, and there was 30,000 people at the game. All our top schools, if you take the top 10 schools in South Africa, maybe even more, 12, 15, got director of rugby's in place. They've got a whole SNC team in place to start working with those kids from 14 years and up. And I think that's why South Africa is also doing so well now. And the other thing is, especially with a lot of our colored players that didn't have the opportunity to get into the system at an early age, they will get scouted at some stage, get pulled into the top schools. There will be scholarships as well, but it's all funded by the schools. It's all funded by the old boys clubs and the people around it, because people in South Africa love their schoolboy rugby. I mean, if you go to a game in Pretoria, Affies play, every game is sold out. So all these big schools, if Grey and Bloom, who's probably most of the time our number 9 school, all the games are sold out. So, and SA Rugby don't have to pay for that. It's all funded within the school structure. Some of our old boys getting involved that love the game and give back to rugby. So I think in South Africa, that's also our strength.
When you say sold out, are you saying 30,000 people to a school game?
Yes. The one in Paul is between 28 and 30,000. All the other schools can't take as many. They take probably 15 or 20. But there's days where the Bulls will play in the URC and Affies will play like a block away, and there's more people at the Affies game than at the Bulls game. So people love the schoolboy rugby. And also those director of rugby, they probably get paid more than an assistant coach at one of the provincial or the club levels with the Bulls or the Lions, whatever. They really get paid well, and they love what they're doing.
We've taken schoolboy rugby off television in New Zealand, haven't we, Ricardo?
Yeah, I can understand the logic behind it.
So in South Africa, all the games get showed on TV. We've got a Super Sports Schools app. So all the rugby, all the top netball from all the schools get shown every weekend, and you can watch it anywhere in South Africa, or even if you're in Australia or New Zealand.
Might have to watch that.
Right, well, that's my viewing for the weekend. South African schoolboys rugby. I've got to go now, guys. I've got to go to Pilates. So you're all big Pilates guys, I'd imagine.
Oh, I'm proud of
Right.
you, Ricardo. You're actually going to Pilates. Are you doing the reformer, or are you doing just the stretching?
Just stretching, a bit of reforming.
You'd be useless at that.
It's not really it's like not a competitive sport, Pilates. It's just sort of like a physical, it's like training and stuff. Like there's no one competing with me.
It's like ice baths. I still don't think it works. Look, this is what I did this morning. Little watt bike. Then John Kerwin's face on the boxing bag and 10 minutes of punching that bag as hard as I can.
Cool. Can you get us some more of those boxing bags, Victor? Like one for me, one for Trimby? That'd be good.
I'll send you both one as well for you and
I'm
Andrew.
going into town to have a brioche and a coffee, and I'll celebrate you guys.
All right, that's the end of the Rivals for this week. We'll catch you next week.